In the previous lesson, we saw how to use the render page helper method to inject an entire ASP.NET web pages page into a view. And so we said that it's useful if we ever want to reuse some fragment of Razor syntax or Razor markup in multiple views, or if we want to reuse it even in a layout. So whenever we made the call and kind of called out to that render page and we said, hey, we want you to load up the test.cshtml, we're also able to pass in a collection of additional input parameters into this page, and we were able to access those input parameters using the element access syntax, so the square brackets. So here we were able to get at the value 12, and here we were able to get at the value whatever this, some my prefix. Okay, so 12 and my prefix, right? All right, so what I want to do in this lesson is to kind of take this idea a step further. If I want to pass data from the view into some sort of partial template that we can reuse in multiple places, and so I want to pass data from the index.cshtml, for example, into my my underscore test cshtml, and maybe even use it like the template for each item in my model, then what I want to use is partial views. So again, partial views are useful whenever you're displaying data in the partial view that's already in the corresponding view model. So let me give you an example of this. Let's close this example down and let's take a look at this other one that I've created called partial views example. All right, and let's set this up so you can kind of see what's going on here. We're going to start off in the index.cshtml page, and here at the very top you can see that we have a model of type enumerable product. So basically a list of product, right? And what I want to do for each product is display it in its own little, have an image and a little buy now button, the price, the description, the title of that product. And so I want to use some sort of template for that. Now I could actually encode that entire template right here inside of my for each statement. And we've done that many times already, but a little more elegant approach might be to actually create some fragment of HTML, some fragment of Razor as a template for each item in my model. And so for each product in my collection of products, what I want to do is then utilize this product details.cshtml. Let's take a look at that. So you can see that it too has a model, and this is the main difference between using partial views and render page like we learned about in the previous lesson. Render page, you can do kind of anything. It's just like using view bag. You can stick anything in the view bag. It's very loosely typed. We're able to stick a number and a string and whatever else we want to and just pass it in. And then we reference it in a weakly typed manner as well, just by using the element access or syntax. Element 0, element 1, and so on. Here we're able to work with each item in our model in a strongly typed fashion because you can see that we're working with individual product instances of the product class. So inside of this I have a div section, and this div will basically be styled up with bootstrap.cs, so bootstrap from Twitter. And here I want to create an image, and then underneath the image I'll put the title, and then I'll have a buy button with the price in it. And so again, I'm using Bootstrap to style everything up to make it look good, but you'll notice that I'm injecting in every once in a while something from the model, the name, the product ID, maybe a description, maybe a price, for example. And so what I want this to do in the index.cshtml is reuse that underscore products detail.cshtml as the template for each product in my collection of products, right? So let's look at the two different ways that I can actually use this. There's two different methods. I can use render partial. We'll look at that first. And then we can also use something just called the partial method, and we'll use that next. Render partial, there's a subtle difference between the two. Render partial will just spit out the results straight to the response stream. So there's no getting back anything. You'll notice that it's a void method. So we're not going to return back a string. You're just basically saying, hey, whatever gets returned from product details.cshtml as we pass in this instance of product in our for each, just go ahead and write it. write it. I don't want it back. I don't want to look at it. And so we'll see how that is different from using the partial method below it in just a moment. So let's see what we're looking at here. I'm going to go ahead and run the application. And what you'll see is just 4 instances of product in our collection. And for each one, we call that underscore product details.cshtml in order to style up each individual instance of product. And so here we're just getting these little silly images. I'm using placehold.it, placehold it, just a little service that allows you to get a fake image. And so I just basically put the text in foo and bar and baz and quirk. We would obviously replace those with real images for our application. Here we have the name of the product, the price, and a buy now button. And the buy now button, if you look in the status bar, you can see that it would take us to the detail for product number 1, product number 2, product number 3. If we had the rest of this application implemented, and we don't. If we hit it, it'll just go to, not found. But that's not really the point of this. Also, just a side note here, by using the Bootstrap classes, I'm able to make this responsive. So if it's on a small screen, everything will be stacked vertically. If it's on a larger screen, everything will be stacked horizontally. Okay, so the main takeaway, though, is that render partial will farm out the styling for each instance of our model, in this case a list of product or IEnumerable product. And for each instance of product, it uses the product details.cshtml page that we looked at. Now it's strongly typed, we can use product in there, but then we're just spitting it out to the response stream. Now, in contrast, let's take a look at the next example. I need to comment out line number 5 where we create a product string variable. Here I'm going to actually make the call to the partial method. And notice that as I hover my mouse cursor over the partial method, that it's actually returning me something. It's returning me a object of type MVC HTML string, and I'm going to add that to this string, just concatenate it, and then finally in line number 18, let me comment this out, we're going to output whatever it is that we've been collecting up here. Now, a couple of things that I need to mention here. Partial allows us to retrieve a string, whereas render partial just spit out the response directly. We didn't get the chance to modify it or look at it. Here in partial, I'm able to grab it off, save it in a variable, modify it in some way if I really wanted to. Now, we said that it returns a data type of MVC HTML string. What exactly is that? Well, it's just an HTML encoded string, and there was a technical purpose for this prior to the Razor syntax. However, Razor kind of obviated it, so you can just think of this as a string that contains HTML. Now, think of this as an encoded version of HTML, which means that it is encoding all angle brackets as their HTML equivalent. So a left angle bracket would be ampersand LT semicolon, and the greater than or the closing angle bracket would be ampersand GT semicolon, okay? And so that's the encoded version. What we probably want is the decoded version, because we're actually going to use it in our page. So we want it to actually use the angle brackets, not just the HTML representation of angle brackets. So that's why we want to use the raw method. If you take a look at the help for the raw, it's going to spit out whatever's in our string that we've been collecting in our for each statement there. And notice that it returns markup that's not HTML encoded. So it's going to decode all of those ampersand LT semicolons and ampersand GT semicolons into angle brackets correctly and things like that. So that's why we'll get the exact same results, but the way we go about it was a little bit different. Same results. All right, so kind of to recap here, in 2 videos now, we've looked at utilizing fragments of markup 2 different ways. We looked at, in the previous lesson, render page, which allows us to, in a loosely typed way, call out to a template, some fragment of Razor, and then pass it data in a loosely typed manner. And now we've looked at partial views, which allows us to do the exact same thing except to farm out to that template in a strongly typed manner by passing in an instance, a strongly typed instance of our model. So next up, what we're going to do is look at still one more technique for reusing fragments of markup across multiple pages or several times within the same page. We'll see you in the next lesson. Thank you.